Well, good evening, brothers and guests. Thank you for joining us this evening for our State of Delta Upsilon Town Hall. My name is Justin Kirk, and I have the pleasure of serving as the Executive Director of Delta Upsilon Fraternity and Foundation. Tonight is our third Town Hall. We had one last fall and earlier this summer. And tonight we'll provide a few fraternity updates, but we are excited to share with you some exciting new research findings from the North American Interfraternity Conference, or the NIC. We have received a number of questions in advance, and we will attempt to answer those throughout tonight's presentation. If you do have a question, please type it in the Q&A box. We hope to get to all your questions this evening. But if you have a more specific question about your chapter, please type it in the box with your email, and we will follow up after the session. We will answer most of your questions at the end of the presentation. It is now my pleasure to introduce the president of Delta Upsilon Fraternity, Tom Durein, Oregon State 92.
Good evening, all, and please allow me to add my thank you for joining us. Although we are virtual, it is good to be with you. Sharing the DU story is one of the most satisfying parts about being president of our great fraternity. So thank you for joining us and spending part of your evening with us, a little bit of learning and a little bit of sharing and a little bit of catching up. We're grateful. As many of you know, we began these town halls, gosh, it's almost a year ago now, a little over a year ago now, in September last fall, to update our membership on how the fraternity was responding to the pandemic. And since then, we found this to be an effective way of communicating with you all and about what is happening at DU and sharing with our loyal alumni and our campus partners our catch-ups. Each of these town halls has included a couple of hundred participants, and we keep having new people join us. So we find that it's an effective means of communication. So we've continued on and chose to share tonight's information with you via the town hall format. COVID-19 has brought both challenges and opportunity to the fraternity, and not just to Delta Upsilon, but throughout the interfraternal community. As you all know, we face these challenges head on, and we look for opportunities to deliver the DU experience in a different way. All things considered, we're pretty confident that we've had a successful last year, and we're very, very grateful to not only our students, but our campuses, our campus partners, and our staff for helping us to pivot and shift our gears so that we could continue to learn effectively and help our students in the best way that we know how. We couldn't be more pleased that we've been able to resume our operations, and the experience on campus this summer and fall have kind of come back with a sense of normalcy, which is nice. In August, we were able to hold our biannual Leadership Institute in person in New Orleans. More than 200 of our brothers and guests were able to come together in person for the first time in 18 months. We celebrated our successes from the year. We conducted fraternity business, which we have to do on an annual basis. We delivered education, and we met and we had fraternal brotherhood. Most importantly, we shared that brotherhood and our fellowship with each other, and we were glad to be together. We were also able to hold our Delta Upsilon Emerging Leaders Program, our experience, or what we call Dual, as you all know, in person in New Orleans, concurrently with the Leadership Institute. 30 of our newest members participated in that program and focused on our principles and identifying their own personal leadership styles in the hopes of taking that skill set back and sharing it with their chapters and helping their own individual communities grow. Beyond that, our fraternity's board of directors will meet in Chicago in just about 3 weeks, and we are making plans for the President's Academy and our annual regional leadership academies in the spring. Personally, I've enjoyed the opportunity to be back on the road. One of the things that, as I mentioned, I love most is visiting with our alumni and our students when we get the chance. Being back on the road and back in person with fellow board members is very, very fulfilling for me with my fraternity experience. And I'm grateful to be able to spend some time this fall meeting with alumni and donors to the organization. So I'll let Justin take it from there, but thank you again for joining us tonight. We look forward to sharing this time with you.
Thanks, Tom. And I'd like to start by providing all of you an update on our fraternity's membership. In our town hall this past June, I shared with you that recruitment numbers for last academic year were down 13%. And being down 13%, we actually were pretty pleased with that number. Going into the year, we had a lot of unknowns. And if you told me at the start of the pandemic that our recruitment numbers would only be down 13%, I think we'd be pretty happy. But being down 13% certainly is not a positive in the overall grand scheme of things. And so that has been one of our top line priorities as a fraternity staff as we enter this academic year. Our team has spent significant time this summer working with chapters on their recruitment plans for the academic year. And we launched a new program this summer called Amplify DU. And so in the Amplify DU, we held 5 recruitment education webinars via Zoom for our recruitment chairman. We had a team of volunteer coaches who were interacting regularly throughout the summer with their assigned chapters. They had 3 small group coaching calls and 3 guided team GroupMe chats. We offered a $500 chapter recruitment scholarship to any chapter who completed the entire Amplified DU program. So chapters that worked with us all summer and completed each of the activities, we offered them a $500 recruitment scholarship that they could use this fall to attract men of merit to the chapter. And so we're excited to be able to hand out these $500 scholarships to men who joined our chapters this fall and for those chapters who completed the Amplified DU program. We also set some goals and stretch goals for each chapter. And if the chapter reaches their goal, they'll receive a complimentary RLA registration this spring. And if they reach their stretch goal, they'll also receive a financial credit on their chapter bill. So we've really tried to provide more education, more resources, and some incentives that chapters would put recruitment back on the top of the list for the priorities this year. And what we have found so far is we have some pretty good recruitment numbers coming in this fall. So if we look at last year, July through September of 2020, we had 329 associate members join DU over those first couple months of the academic year. This year, we're at 426 through September, and just looking at the recruitment results over the last 3 weeks, that number continues to grow at a pace significantly higher than last year. So our recruitment numbers are getting back to and actually approaching pre-pandemic levels. We're a little higher than where we were the year before the pandemic. So we think that all of that recruitment coaching and training we provided this summer is really benefiting chapters as they return to school this fall. Overall, our membership coming back in the fall was down about 6% from September 2020. And so that's a pretty reasonable number when we think about recruitment being down 13%, but our overall membership coming back being down 6%. So if we can continue this trend throughout the fall and into the spring of some good, strong recruitment numbers, that 6% will certainly bounce back within the next year or two. And so we're feeling pretty good about recruitment and membership numbers, and our recruitment chairmen deserve a lot of credit because I know they put in a lot of hard work this summer and throughout the fall. I was actually visiting a chapter this past Sunday. I was at the chapter meeting, and the chapter had dwindled down to 15 men, but they recruited 28 men this fall. And you could just see the excitement in the room with all the new members. The recruitment chairman, he deserved a lot of credit. He said he spent almost the entire summer thinking about recruitment, coming up with new strategies, was able to execute them when he got back to school in the fall. And it's for that chapter, it's one of their largest recruitment classes they've had in the last 10 years. And so we're seeing that recruitment training is working, and we're pretty excited for our chapters. Now, the focus of tonight's town hall is going to be on the NIC Research Initiative. Approximately 2 years ago, the NIC's Governing Council, which is its board of directors, established a research committee. And the charge for that committee was to pursue an aggressive and robust research agenda. And that research agenda has become one of the top line goals for the conference. And so each year, the NIC's Governing Council sets KPIs, the key performance indicators, they set goals for the conference, and advancing this research agenda has become one of the top line goals for the NIC. I've had this pleasure of serving as the chairman of the NIC Research Committee since its inception. And on my committee, I'm joined by my peer executive directors at Sigma Nu, Delta Tau Delta, Phi Gamma Delta. The CEO of the NIC is on our committee. And we have a higher education PhD consultant who advises our committee on various projects and researchers that we should work with. So why did we establish this research committee, and what were some of our goals? What we really wanted to do was build on the existing knowledge about fraternity. We wanted to be able to better understand the fraternity experience, better understand what's happening on the global scale, to understand the impact it's having on our members, our chapters, and the broader communities. We have a growing need to advocate for our fraternity experience. And over the last couple of years, that need for advocacy has increased significantly. And so what the research will allow us to do is greatly enhance our ability to advocate for the experience with our host institutions, local and state governments, and members of Congress. The fraternity and sororities, we have a political action committee. We have a team of lobbyists in DC. We have local lobbyists in a lot of different cities where we have campuses. And this research is going to become part of their toolkit, part of their arsenal that allows us to advocate for the fraternity experience. Some of the questions we received in advance were asking about some of the protests and the anti-fraternity movement that's happening on campus. And what this research allows us to do is share information about the positive aspects of fraternity with campus professionals, with deans of students, with presidents of universities, with parents, to show the impact that fraternity is having in a very positive way. What we know is the story of fraternity, it's being told every day. And sometimes that story is positive and other times it's not. But all too often, somebody else is telling our story. And the media is setting the narrative for our organizations, and it's often focused on the poor decisions of just a few chapters and few individuals. Those poor decisions of the few are creating the narrative for the larger collective. Now, don't get me wrong, we certainly have our challenges that we need to confront, and we need to address behaviors, and we need to hold people accountable when they need to be held accountable. But what we've found with our research, it's going to allow us to tell the story and advocate for fraternities in a very different way. Over the last 20 years, there have been very few large national research projects on fraternity and sorority. And actually, you can probably count them on one hand. There's 2 or 3. And anytime somebody talks about the fraternity experience on the national, international level, they point to some very specific studies. And many of those studies are now out of date, and they don't really discuss the impact of the experience, the impact on our men and our chapters and the good that we're doing. Those studies have been largely focused on the risks of fraternity, and very few have examined our members' growth, learning, and development. So we've spent the last 2 years pursuing this robust research agenda, and we're excited to be able to start sharing some of those initial results. So what I want to do is just share our projects that we have completed over the last 2 years. And these studies have been a combination of original research, where we have a research topic, we have a research question, and then we go hire researchers from a research center at a university or a large national research company to pursue that study or the question. Or we work with researchers who have existing surveys or instruments that they're already using to conduct the study. And so the studies that we've conducted so far, the first one was we looked at the value of the single-sex fraternity experience. That if you have followed the Harvard case that we actually won in court over the last couple of years, Harvard was trying to eliminate single-sex organizations. And so we saw the need that we had to advocate for the value of a single-sex organization in today's environment. And so we partnered with the University of Tennessee Post-Secondary Research Center and their Dr. Patrick Biddix there. And that Tennessee Research Center is one of the most well-respected research center in the country, and they conducted that value of the single-sex experience study. The Greek Experience Revisited, we worked with Dr. Gary Pike out of Indiana University, and he used an existing instrument called the NSSE study, NSSE, and that is one of the most well-respected studies across all of higher education. Many institutions use it. They've been using it for years. And what Dr. Pike did is he looked at some very specific data within the NSSE study and pulled out the fraternity and sorority information so that we could compare that to students who are unaffiliated. Dr. Pike also used that NSSE data to do a physical and mental wellness study. We worked with Dr. Biddix to do an alcohol and other drugs literature review. We worked with Everfi. Everfi is the company that does the Greek Life EDU, Alcohol EDU, one of the largest educational online learning platforms that institutions of higher education use. And so EverFi used the data that they had to look at perspectives on fraternity and sorority life and positive youth development within our organizations. And probably the study that we're most excited about, and I think most would say is probably the most credible, is we worked with Gallup on a large study looking at fraternity and sorority alumni attitudes. And so Gallup recently conducted a large study of approximately 40,000 alumni, university alumni that have graduated in the last 10 years. And within that study, they were able to draw out the fraternity and sorority alumni and look at them and their attitudes and experiences compared to the unaffiliated alumni. And so that has been a really positive study that I'm excited to share some results on. And lastly, we looked at another mental health and wellness for fraternity members study. We were very concerned over the last year about how the pandemic was impacting our members' health and wellness. And so that's why you can see we conducted 2 studies to better understand how the pandemic and the experience is impacting the health and wellness of our members. So we've completed all those studies. And so what we did this summer was we looked across all those studies. And so we spent the last 3 months evaluating all the research projects to look for the common themes. We want to be able to share this information that makes sense in a digestible way where somebody doesn't have to go read a 50-page research report. And so we look for common themes across the studies and the most impactful points that we could share with our constituents. And so tonight I'm going to share with you those 3 themes that we found across all of the studies. Our first key finding was that fraternity members experience stronger mental health and wellness. Fraternity members, they experience stronger health and wellness. And so what we know is that college men today are experiencing loneliness and depression at increasing rates. And fraternities are empowering students to create a strong support system around them. And so this family, this home, I mean, many of us think about our fraternity experience and our fraternity brothers as this home away from home, that fraternities are they're offering help and guidance when our members need it most. And the research is showing that this connection can create a strong sense of belonging to the organization, and it's leading members to have more positive mental health and less anxiety and depression than other students. Our brothers are feeling comfortable having tough conversations and learning from each other. And when they seek help, research is showing that members are twice as likely to reach out to a fraternity brother than anybody else. So let's look at some of the key, what I'm going to call proof points within this mental health and wellness area. So looking across those 2 studies, we found that fraternity members are reporting higher levels of positive mental health and less depression and anxiety than unaffiliated members. And you'll hear me throughout tonight talk about fraternity members and unaffiliated members. And we really wanted to be able to look at the fraternity experience and the value it's providing as compared to those students who are not joining a fraternity or sorority and the experience that they are having, because that gives us a better perspective on how fraternity is impacting individuals. And second one, I mentioned this earlier here, that members, when they're seeking help, they're twice as likely to turn to a brother than anyone else. So if you think about that, the men in our chapter are turning to a fraternity brother when they need help, more than they will another friend on campus, a professor, a family member, their parents. If they seek counseling, they're turning to their fraternity brothers more than anybody else when they need help. And so what that says to me is our brothers feel very comfortable talking with their other brothers about what is happening in their life. And so the fraternity is providing the environment where our men can have tough conversations, especially about the issues around relationships, family, and mental health struggles. So in those studies, when we asked the brothers, what are you talking about? What are the topics that you're most challenged by, that you're struggling with? These were some of the common themes, that they really struggle with the relationships that they have and some family and mental health struggles. So our second key finding, moving on from the mental health, is fraternities create a lifelong connection to the campus, the community, and their peers. So if you think about it, fraternities are creating this lifelong connection to their environment and surroundings. So we found, and this probably isn't surprising to those of you on the town hall tonight, that fraternity men love their collegiate experience as students and as alumni, as the Gallup reports told us. And in fact, more than 8 out of 10 fraternity members, these are alumni, say they would rejoin their organizations if they had the decision to make all over again. The research is showing that fraternity membership is connecting our men to the university in a way that non-members simply don't experience. They're more satisfied as students and as alumni, and they're more likely to recommend and give back to their alma maters. So our members are feeling more engaged inside and outside the classroom than their peers. They're reporting that they're feeling supported by their faculty, and nearly half are serving leadership roles across campus, which is much higher than the unaffiliated student. They're also more connected to their local communities, and the research is showing they spend significant time giving back to those communities. So what were some of the proof points that helped us create that narrative around lifelong connections? 78% of fraternity members say they feel a strong connection to campus, and they're more satisfied with their collegiate experience than the unaffiliated members. As I mentioned, nearly half of fraternity members serve in other campus leadership roles. So they're not just fraternity members, they're not just leaders in their chapter, but they're also leaders across campus. And I think one that really stands out is fraternity members have a stronger interaction with faculty than their peers. And so fraternity members are saying they feel like their professors cared about them as a person or made them excited about learning. And again, this is much higher than their unaffiliated peers. Our fraternity members also spend significantly more time volunteering and doing service work and mentoring others. That probably isn't a surprise to anybody that knows how important service and philanthropy is to our organizations, and that for many of our alumni, that this commitment to service and philanthropy is one that they carry on throughout their lives. Our fraternity members are more likely to feel like they belong in their communities, that they feel like their community is a place that they belong in, that they feel like they're a part of, that they feel like they're connected to. And fraternity alumni feel a deeper sense of loyalty to their alma mater. And finally, fraternity alumni are more likely to recommend their school to others and donate after graduation. So the donate after graduation, I've heard this many times, that alumni will say, many of our donors are Greek, or they were fraternity or sorority members. I can see the donor rolls, and I know this alumnus, and they were a fraternity man like I was. Well, what the research is saying, coming out of the Gallup study, again, and this was affiliated, unaffiliated members, that fraternity alumni are more likely to recommend their university, which is important in today's competitive environment when it comes to admissions, and they're more likely to donate after graduation. So we'll talk about our third and final key finding, that fraternities are an accelerator for success in college and beyond. We know that students spend 90% of their time outside the classroom, and fraternities are capitalizing on those hours by preparing men for success in college and in their futures far beyond what their peers experience. In a study of the thousands of alumni, again, this is the Gallup study, and it studied alumni of diverse backgrounds, show that this is holding true regardless of an individual background or socioeconomic status entering college. So no matter what their experience was or the socioeconomic background as they enter college, that fraternities are preparing these men for success later in life at a much higher rate. We know that our fraternity men, we have higher expectations of them, and our support and network the fraternities provide, our members are experiencing gains in learning and graduating at higher rates than their peers. Nearly 75% of chapters offer focused leadership development programming at least monthly, and 83% of members say their confidence in their leadership skills increased as a result because of their membership. So when you think about that, it's really no surprise that fraternity alumni are twice as likely to believe that their college experience prepared them well for college. So one of the interesting data points as we are looking at this data is that the research showed that 1 in 5 students considers joining a fraternity, but doesn't because they're concerned about academics or finances. And as we looked at the study, that we're finding fraternity members are more connected to professors, that they're excelling in the classroom. There's a higher retention rate. And so the 1 in 5 who considers joining and doesn't join for academics, this is the information we need to be arming our recruitment chairman with, that joining a fraternity will actually better prepare you for college. It'll connect you with your professors, and there isn't a great concern about academics. And so lastly, before we move on to the proof points, that fraternity alumni reported they're being more fulfilled in their careers and lives in every aspect of well-being that's measured, from the career to the community and financial to physical, because of the relationships and resources they leverage as a result of the fraternity. So again, I mentioned that 83% of our members indicate stronger leadership confidence as a result of their fraternity membership. And so when they graduate and they're entering the workforce, and when they're thinking about leading a team, and the confidence that our members as a result of the experience are feeling much more confident. Fraternity members are showing significantly higher gains than their peers in the first year of college. And so this myth about deferred recruitment, that we need to give students a semester to get acclimated to the college, they're better off joining in the second semester. Actually, what the research is showing, that our students joining are having significantly higher learning gains than their peers who don't join a fraternity in their first year of college. Fraternity members are experiencing stronger retention and persistence to graduation, and this will be a point that we'll be sharing widely with our higher education and campus partners, because we know how important that retention and persistence is to our host institutions. Our fraternity alumni are finding jobs more quickly after graduation, and they're more engaged in the workplace. They're twice as likely to feel like the alma mater prepared them well for life after college, and they gained important job-related skills. And so when you think about what the fraternity does and our mission of building better men, this accelerating success speaks directly to it. That as a result of our experience, our men are becoming better, and they are better prepared for the life after college, whether it be their careers, their community, their home life, that their well-being is in a much higher place as a result of their fraternity experience. So somebody had asked, what are a couple quick key points that I can share with other alumni when they question whether fraternities are still relevant, or that I can share with somebody else who is thinking about their son joining a fraternity, but they don't know? I think these 3 key findings that we found are the points that we should all remember, and we should be able to share with anybody who wants to challenge the notion of fraternity still being relevant, or if they question the impact the fraternities are having and whether they're good or bad on the impact. So again, fraternity members are experiencing stronger health and wellness. The fraternities are creating lifelong connections to the campus, community, and their peers. And finally, fraternities are an accelerator for success in college and beyond. And so there were also a couple of questions about how would we be sharing this information with other constituents? In 2 weeks, we have a meeting with all fraternity and sorority executives across the industry. And as part of that meeting, we're going to talk about these research findings, and we're going to talk about best practices on how we can share these more broadly. The NIC is working with a PR consultant who is developing a toolkit and creating a PR strategy so that we can share these findings with our higher education partners, with parents, with alumni, with any of the media who is asking about fraternity, or they want to do an interview with the CEO of the NIC, that these research findings are going to become the talking points that we use across the board when you doing our PR. And so you're getting a sneak peek really at this narrative, because I've been chairing the NIC's research committee, but we'll start sharing this information more broadly across all of our communication vehicles. So we do have some projects that we have started this year. We saw the list of all the projects that we've completed over the last 2 years. We're looking at first generation fraternity men, that what does their experience look like and how does it impact first generation fraternity men. What we do know is over the next 5 to 7 years, and we're looking at enrollment trends, there's going to be an increase of first generation fraternity men or first generation college students. And so we want to be well prepared to be able to talk about how this experience impacts first generation men. We're working with some market research companies on understanding the motivations to join. And so why are fraternity men joining? And maybe more importantly, why are men not joining our chapters? And so working with some market research firms to better understand that. We're looking at hypermasculinity. And then finally, a study on hazing solutions efficacy. We've done a lot of studies and a lot of work understanding, does hazing exist? And I think we can probably all agree that there is hazing at some level within the fraternity experience. But there's been very little research to understand what are the solutions and best practices that actually curb hazing or that impact it, or what would be the early warning signs that we could be looking for men who are joining who may be predisposed to want to haze, or what are the early warning signs that we could see within our chapter that would help us know, do we have some risk here? So this large-scale hazing study, and we're working with Penn State University and the University of Tennessee on the study. It will be a multi-year study, and I think it'll be really impactful when we look at hazing and what we can do going forward when it comes to solutions. And so finally, if you're interested in learning more about any of these studies, if you're a researcher or just a data geek and you want to dig in and go read the 50, 60-page reports. If you go to nicfraternity.org, the research projects and our research narratives, it is on the front page, the homepage of the NIC. And you'll be able to review more of the proof points, learn more about the studies, and actually, if you have questions, and if you want to know more about something we shared tonight, feel free to give me a call, and I'd be happy to talk through the studies and why we think they're important. So Tom, I'm going to turn it over to you for the next portion of tonight's program.
That was a rookie mistake for those of us that are on Zoom and mute. I was our Zoom and Teams. I was on mute. Apologies. Thank you, Justin, for sharing that information. You know, it's interesting, and we very much, and I very much enjoy hearing it. It's crazy to think of what's gone on in the last 2 years and how we have progressed through the pandemic. And it's, I will say that it's fulfilling, or it's reinforcing, if you will, to know that the research from the NIC is validating, you know, the fraternity experience. The NIC's research is similar to what we've been learning in our own fraternity through our DU membership outcomes assessment and other surveys that we conduct. It's very, very important for us to measure our outcomes and to take a look and to constantly be inviting amongst ourselves questions and answers around, are we relevant? Are we having the impact that we want to have on our chapters and our students and our alumni? We also know that the last 15 years in Delta Upsilon represents one of the most remarkable periods in fraternity's history. At a time when some folks out there have questioned the relevance of fraternities, our progress at Delta Upsilon in membership and in academics, leadership development, and alumni support has solidified North America's oldest non-secret fraternity as what we like to know as the premier brotherhood experience for college men. So we're learning that, it's being reinforced, and it's great to hear. DU stands out among other fraternities for the increase in our average chapter size from 28 members in 2006 to 51 members per chapter in 2021. The strategic development of our educational programming and our chapter servicing efforts, all of that has led to not simply our increased recruitment numbers, but increased retention, as we just talked about, and larger overall chapter sizes. We are doing what we need to do to keep students engaged and to show and demonstrate value. It makes them want to stay. That's the retention, and it makes people want to join, which is wonderful. We're effectively communicating that. With chapters more focused on leadership development programming and academics and less on the social aspects, the fraternity is recruiting a more academically oriented student. The social part of our organization, the brotherhood part, very, very important. That's what's kept us going since 1834, but as important to students today is their academic pursuits. The average GPA of a DU chapter has increased from 2.97 to 3.27. Very, very important. We have grown our educational programming portfolio, and the number of men that attend one of our programs on an annual basis, that's increased from 5 men to 20 men. That's an average, from 5 to 20 men experiencing one of our DU leadership educational programs. That to me is incredible. The more people that we have that experience that, and remember, they're also meeting other DUs at these programs. And so the whole experience, it's more holistic in nature. And our donors have responded to the fraternity's success, with the average gift to our DU Foundation increasing significantly over the past 10 to 15 years. So although our donor base has been strengthened because of the fraternity's progress, more alumni need to be able to hear our story and invest in our mission to enhance the fraternity's momentum. Very, very important. We know that DU's most successful chapters take full advantage of the cutting edge programming and resources that are funded by our foundation. However, annual DUEF, that's the Educational Foundation grants to the fraternity, are only funding about 38% of the educational costs of all of our Building Better Men initiatives. And that represents a real financial barrier to our undergraduates. When you think about that, only 38% of our costs are being funded by that fraternity grant, by the Educational Foundation grant. So all of that, because of that, the DU Educational Foundation is in the silent phase of a multi-million-dollar capital campaign. So maybe some of you have heard rumors or rumblings of this. We are, in fact, well on our way. We are in the silent phase of this very, very important multi-million-dollar campaign. The task of moving forward with the campaign was carefully considered, and it was not taken lightly. We've spent 18 months conducting a feasibility study, thanks to the Johnson, Grossnickel and Associates, a trusted expert in the field of taking a look at fraternity fundraising. Throughout the feasibility study, we interviewed top alumni, and we gathered feedback from lifelong DUs and from our constituencies, and we covered and considered the evolving needs of all of our chapters and our undergraduates today. Very important, because it kind of aligns itself with what Justin was just talking about with the NIC research initiatives. The feasibility study that we undertook provided Delta Upsilon's leadership with clarity for our campaign, with clarity on 3 main priorities. And I want to share those with you today. The first would be individual development. The second would be chapter enhancement. And the third being, very, very importantly, fraternal relevance and innovation. These priority areas were carefully honed in on, and they were chosen to meet the needs of our chapter undergraduates and our chapters themselves. There is such a strong affinity for one's own local chapter. We know that, especially at Delta Upsilon, but that affinity for our own local chapters developed during our undergraduate experience. I felt it when I was at Oregon State. It continues on. I still have an affinity for my own chapter and my chapter brothers today, but we believe that this current campaign's case for support gives solid justification for how we can strengthen and empower an individual chapter, knowing that strong individual chapters represent a thriving overall Delta Upsilon across North America. Very, very important. Our undergraduates, they support our individual, we provide them with individual development. It leads to chapter enhancement. We are relevant and we are able to innovate for the future. Very, very important, our 3 priorities for this campaign. I'm also very excited to share that past President Bruce McKinney, fraternity past President Missouri, Bruce McKinney, has generously agreed to serve our campaign as chairman. And he's already hard at work building a team of volunteers and securing early momentum for the campaign. So thank you to Brother Bruce if he's joined us this evening. Unbelievable continued support after being president of the fraternity, taking on this very formidable campaign initiative for us. A lot that we've shared and we've talked at you. We appreciate it. If you're putting some questions in the box, we want to give you a chance to discuss those, but that's about all I've got to share for right now. And brothers, I encourage you to watch your news and the fraternity's website for upcoming alumni receptions in various cities throughout the country and in Canada, which we'll be there to share more specific about this bold campaign undertaking for DU's future. The time will come when every DU will learn of the campaign. We will share this outright. It will come out and everybody will know more about it, but you're some of the first to know that we're in this silent phase. But the time will come when everyone will learn and everybody will know about it, but everybody will be asked to play a supporting role, to support our undergraduates like never before. Everybody agrees that our young men are truly worth it. Now is our time to be able to capitalize on that and build upon our momentum of success, some of the research we just discussed, and to continue to build the fraternity that we've shared love for and affinity for since 1834. Just continue to make it better and to continue to build better men. So from there, I will turn it back over to Justin. He's got some things. Maybe we can discuss some of the information that we've shared.
Well, thanks, Tom. And again, I want to thank everybody for joining us tonight. I know that Tom and I are both more than willing to chat with anybody who heard something interesting tonight, or if you have follow-up questions, our emails are there on the screen, and we'll be happy to arrange a call to discuss what we shared tonight, or really anything else that's happening in DU or across the country about fraternities. I know there's a lot of news that comes at folks, and you may be wondering, what does this mean, or what is that, or is this true, or how is this impacting DU? And Tom and I are more than happy to engage in those conversations and just share what knowledge we have. And we're pretty well connected with what's happening at the NIC and the international level, and what other fraternities are doing to combat trends and work on best practices. So again, I want to thank everybody for joining us tonight, and we hope you have a good rest of your fall. We're looking forward to our board of directors meeting in 3 weeks, where we'll talk about the progress we've made this fall. We have our first campaign cabinet meeting at the same time, along with an alumni event in Chicago. So if there's anybody in the Chicago area, we do want to invite you again to join us on Saturday evening, November 5th, I think it is, for our campaign event in Chicago.
I think it's the 6th.
November 6th.
I think so. Yep.
Think
so.
We would love to see you there if you're in Chicago, or if you're not in Chicago and you just want to come join a big group of DUs and learn about the campaign and share some fellowship because you haven't had a chance to do it in a while. We would welcome anybody to join us in Chicago. So that's all we have tonight. If there's any questions that we have in the chat box, we'll follow up with those individuals directly. But again, thank you for joining us tonight. Thank you for supporting DU. We're off to a great start this fall. Takayu Patheka.